Poets for getting us started here today. We really appreciate it. I have the pleasure of introducing our first featured poet today, Bruce Snider, as many of you probably know. Very excited to have him reading in the series. I think I found out at a Halloween party that he was going to read for us, and I'm really excited. I was really excited to hear that, and I'm glad this day has come. Bruce Snider is the author of 3 poetry collections. Fruit, which I see is available. Looks like this. Is available for sale here today. This came out from the University of Wisconsin Press. He's also the author of Paradise, Indiana, from Pleiades, and The Year We Studied Women, also from the University of Wisconsin Press. He is co-editor of the poems Country, Place, and Poetic Practice, which appeared in 2018. His poems have appeared in many wonderful publications, including American Poetry Review, Best American Poetry, Harvard Review, Kenyon Review, New England Review Poetry, and Threepenny Review. His awards include a 2023 NEA Fellowship, a Wallace Stegner Fellowship, also a James A. Michener Fellowship, and a Jenny McKean Writer-in-Washington Award. Bruce lives right here in Baltimore, and he teaches in the writing seminars at Johns Hopkins University. Please welcome Bruce Snider.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you all for coming out. It's such a pleasure, and thank you to Stephen and to David for inviting me to read, and of course thank you to Brid in Hand. It's great to be here joining this amazing series. I thought I would just start, I'm just going to set my timer here. I'm going to start with an older poem. I've written a lot about where I grew up in Indiana. It's a rural town in Indiana. A lot of place-based poems. So I thought maybe I'd start with one of those. And this is a poem. When I was a kid, I had there was a kid in my class, I must have been in junior high, and it was one of these tragic stories where he was doing something with a lawnmower earlier in the day and then started trying to light fireworks and caught fire. And was horribly disfigured by this fire. But one of the things that struck me was that from then on in his yard, that yard always, to all of us who grew up around there, was always from then on after the yard where the kid burned, right? And I was really amazed by just thinking about the way memory and event changes our experience of place. And so I wanted to write something about that. I tried, it was a mess for a long time, until I started writing about the smoke. And so this is a poem called The Smoke. Past houses, past pickers and bone cleaners, rats and carrion birds, alley cats clawing out fish heads from the trash, the smoke rose, a black river shivering. It rose past Cherubusco and Wawasee, Goose Lake and Big Cedar, past the steer calf grinding its bud teeth and the dogs that stopped barking to stiff the air. As it traveled, it carried the boy who started it all, flames climbing his sleeve to his collar, to the baseball cap dazzling now on his head. It carried his screams past the gutted warehouse, past Max's metal, iron, and scrap. It rose into combines filling the dead machines. One hair at a time, it rose with his waxen face, eyes and skin spilling into weather, fields, crops, the peach trees withering, fruit darkened, maggot at the root. It rose where nothing else could, into attic crevices, into dreams of people sleeping in their beds. It blackened the steps of the Baptist church, where later the congregation would pray for the match struck just to watch it flare in the darkness, for the way a body is lifted, smoking from the grass, for the trees, how they flickered outside the window, for all that would be remembered, the dirt roads grieving, the harvest time, the sowing of the seeds, for the season they knew would follow, through autumn's blazing maples, through the poplar and ash. So I think in my last book, in Fruit, I wrote, can anybody hear me back there? Yeah, okay. I'm getting notes to speak a little louder. Okay. I'll lean into this. So in my last book, I have a number of poems that were just inspired by scientific facts that I came across. So I thought I'd read a couple of those. This is one called The Average Human. And I don't know about you, I remember reading, I feel like when I was a kid in a weekly reader or something, that, every time you took a breath, you breathe in an atom from Caesar's last breath. And I thought, well, this must be some kind of, of a folktale. But then actually I read this whole article that's about the chemistry of oxygen and the way it spreads. And in fact, there's a lot of truth from that. And that we are actually all constantly breathing in the, Caesar's last breath, just bits of it at times. So that, of course, seemed like kind of insane. So how does a poet not write about that? So this is the poem called The Average Human. The average human breath contains approximately 10 to the 44 molecules, which, once exhaled in time, spread evenly through the atmosphere. So today, I took in the last breaths of James Baldwin, Marie Curie, Genghis Khan, my great-great-grandmother's breath entering me beside the breath of a Viking slave boy, immolated on the flames of his master's burning corpse. I inhaled African queens, Chinese emperors, the homeless man with the bright blue coat down the street. If oxygen is the third most plentiful element in the universe, moving through us like Virgil through the underworld, how long have I tasted the girl drowned among cattails near the murky shore? In ancient Egypt, a priestess packed a corpse with salt, but not before a breath escaped that 2,000 years later entered me, or at least atoms of it, a molecule. Plato theorized atoms in 400 BC, and this morning outside Athens, I took in his last breath, my lungs damp crypts where Charon's oars dipped into the black waters of the river Styx, not knowing who would pay the ferryman, and with what coin, on what tongue. Okay, so here is another science-inspired poem. And this was, really, one of my themes in my books is always, I've written a lot about gender. And so, particularly as sort of a non-traditional, I grew up in rural Indiana. I have very sort of manly brothers. I was the not manly brother. And so I came across this fact that I loved, which was that, for the first 6 weeks following conception, all human embryos develop as female. And I love this idea that there's just this brief period of time where it's just us girls. And so, as somebody who's always thinking about gender, I wanted to write about this. So it's called Elegy for the Girl I Was, and it has that little fact as the epigraph. Little girl of my unbecoming, your ghost moves through me. You, a kink in my walk, tiptoe through the halls of me, vanishing down the lane. Girl of my thousand selves, let the black waters wash over you, who knew neither boy nor man, who knows the graveyard I have always been, sealed crypt of me, your ending, where it all began. Little ghost, remember me, mother, almost, almost. O paper onto which I'm written, script I won't learn. Fate folds, unfolds your cold limbs. Into my warm marrow you reach, cell of my cells, and burn. And so I'm going to read one more of these sort of science poems. And this is a poem called Chemistry. Chemistry. From the Middle Dutch boele, which means lover, bully was a term of endearment in the 16th century, which meant that a feudal lord could take the hand of his love under the apple trees in spring and exclaim, "My bully," feeling adrenaline flood his body as his heart rate tripled and his palms began to release water mixed with urea, ammonia, salt. Essentially, he could feel what I felt over 4 centuries later when Ian Starkey called me a fag. I was 14, and the next day he kicked me twice, spat in my face, took my glasses, and wouldn't give them back. And the whole time sweat glands were developing in our armpits and genitals, and our adrenals were releasing corticosteroids, and something about testosterone was why, though I hated him, I kept imagining him with his shirt off. True, Ian Starkey knew how to hurt me, but I doubt he knew why he was doing it, or that we feel pain when neurons in the brain convert an electrical signal to a chemical signal and back again, which is also what allows us to feel a kiss, or my brain to take strange comfort, imagining all the boys of the world leaning into the strong arms of their tormentors in spring under the apple blossoms, saying, I forgive you, saying, I can never forgive you, saying, my enemy, my bully, my love. And so I'm just going to read just a few newer poems. This is part from a series of poems. I'm finishing up a new manuscript that's called Blood Harmony. That's sort of about brotherhood. I always say my pitch for the book is it's about queerness, addiction, brotherhood, and country music. So I grew up listening to a lot of country music, and really actually love country music. I mean, really the old stuff. And so here I thought I'd read just a couple of poems that are part of this series. And these are kind of poems, I think of them as the thinking poems. I don't know, I'm just thinking about things in these. And this first one is called The Silence is Unusually Loud Tonight. And it's a lyric from a Willie Nelson song. The silence is unusually loud tonight, sang Willie Nelson. A line that comes back to me when I find a barn wren dead in Dad's old seed bucket, and imagine the soft folds of the bird's syrinx hardening into a rigor I think I understand. Soundless fist of once warm flesh, suddenly a symbol of what I'm feeling or not feeling, the self as it does, making everything the self. Once our neighbor cut his dog's vocal cords to keep it from barking. And even then, you could hear it making a hoarse cough, not silence really, but a near silence that was, it seemed to my closeted teenage self, some strangled animal longing for speech. Scientists speculate when we die out, the last words on the planet will come from parrots, who go on echoing us, ghostly tongues locked in their throats. Beyond Earth, a plucked banjo makes no sound. Without particles to carry the waves, there's only the nothingness we call space. Silence, it seems, is the rule, words the exception. Words all day moving through me, words bearing my loves and fears. I am a vibration of atoms I can't hear. I walk the yard. Should I sing or pray? Is it me or the wind strumming a tree branch, lined with birds, that begins to play? And this is another one, and the title of it is, a lot of these have these kind of long titles. Reading that Johnny Cash suffered from autonomic neuropathy when he recorded Hurt, which is the name of a single that he released. And the title kind of goes into the body of the poem. Reading that Johnny Cash suffered from autonomic neuropathy when he recorded Hurt, I remember my brain is made of 73% water, which means I'm a lake that suffers when a pain response spreads from my blistered finger to my prefrontal cortex, amygdala, and temporal lobe. The latter is where jokes are made, which is why when my friend stubs his toe, we laugh so hard it's as if we're made of laughter. Dolly Parton once said, through tears, laughter was her favorite emotion. But Herodotus believed it could bring the wrath of the gods. Laughter can be a symptom of epilepsy, mania, or chemical addiction. It can cause in excess irregular heartbeat and cardiac rupture. Experiments show mice can be tickled into spasms that resemble laughter. But in the Middle Ages, some thought it blasphemy to suggest Jesus laughed. What do I know? Most days I'm made of doubt, or at least the protein-based brain enzymes that trigger it. The human hand is woven of the same carbon found in glass and tree bark, which might be why some mornings I'm made of mirrors and the rough knots of a dead hickory, and other days I'm window panes and the lush pink petals of a flowering crab. What, I worry, am I meant to feel? The truth is, pain responses travel from sources of tissue damage through a braid of fatty nerve fibers to a brain flooded with infinite desires and fears, which I've read is what I'm made of when I'm made of water, saliva, tears. I think I'm going to just read one more poem, and this is a poem. It's very different than those poems. It's a poem. I'm a big fan of Moby Dick. I don't know how many love Moby Dick. I love Moby Dick, and I went through this whole phase of really being kind of obsessed with Melville. And one of the interesting things about Melville, I think it's really, to me, it was such a, I don't know, it's such a writer's story, which is that Melville, at the end of his life, thought that he was a failure. I mean, because his books were out of print when he died, he was desperate for money. He wasn't writing at all, and he took a job at the Customs House in New York City. And so he spent his last days really believing that his work had amounted to nothing. And of course, he went on to have this profound, I think, impact on American writing. And so from a writer point of view, you know, it's kind of your fantasy. It's like you think you die. It's what you hold the hope onto. It's like you think, my work, it meant nothing, but maybe after my death, right, someone will keep it alive. So it's, to me, strikes me as such a writer's sort of story. So this poem is simply called Melville at the Customs House, 1880. He's not done yet, and doesn't want to be, the last one here again tonight, sorting what's left, rough crates unpacked by whale oil flame, the sour smell of sweat and dust that's new again, yet the same. On break, he stretches his arms and legs, takes a bite of bread, one boiled egg, remembers how the whalers sopped their shit biscuits in hot oil pots. He can almost see their faces now. He dabs his brow, turns back toward the floor of trunks, crates, drums. His head swims. Still they come, more again, more. The novel's now behind him. The world seems different, dimmed. All day his bad back aches, corns throbbing until both souls burn. His wife says he's just tired. Perhaps he is. Once he dreamt his son, dead 13 years, walked into the customs house alone, spilled his bags out at his feet, heap of trousers, shirts, a mess that lay between them, but no answers, no address, nothing smuggled from the spirit realm. Just his son's eyes staring back at him, sad, dark, bottomless. Some days he imagines the bridge that hovers unfinished over the East River, where last week another workman fell from its edge. Later, he'll walk to where its towers crest the river shelf, past the city's thousand things, past dock hawkers, his fading self. Now he gathers papers like fates, checks the shipping logs, gates that lock him out, then in. The workmen never notice him. A ghost, he floats through offices on flagstone floors to a shipment of caged hens where black flies drone. He is no one, or is he everyone? He counts the cages like his days, soon emptied, all the same. He smooths the creases from his smudged page. He signs his name. Thank you.